Okay, let's unpack this. If you've ever scrolled through photos of Barcelona, you probably see the usual suspects,
The
right?
classics.
Yeah, the Sagrada Familia soaring up, the Rambla buzzing, those sun-drenched beaches. It looks like the perfect Mediterranean postcard.
It does, but the sources we've looked at, they paint a much, much deeper picture.
Right. It's not just a pretty destination. It's this vast, dense, urban organism.
Exactly. A complex laboratory, really. You've got echoes of Roman history rubbing up against medieval alleys, and then these visionary, sometimes clashing, modern plans layered on top.
That's the core tension we really need to explore today, isn't it?
That's our mission for this deep dive. To get into the city's incredible history, its scale, the unique challenges it's facing now, and that enduring global charm.
Why does Barcelona matter so much as this kind of model city?
Because it's a critical blueprint, you know,
Right.
for studying urban tension, success, and that overwhelming magnetism that shapes cities in the 21st century.
And the scale, especially given the geography, the numbers are almost hard to believe.
They really are.
We're talking about the core city being incredibly compact, just 101 square kilometers,
This is tiny when you think about it.
and crammed into that. 1.68 million residents.
So the density is just enormous.
Over 16,700 people per square kilometer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the highest in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Up there with parts of Manhattan.
It absolutely is. And that creates this constant feeling of movement, of intensity. Every street corner feels alive.
And that dense core, it anchors a huge economic zone.
Yeah, the wider functional urban area, that's about 5.47 million people, and it drives a metro GDP of around $177 billion.
Wow.
And you see the region's health in the GDP per capita, too. 28,400, that's what, 16% above the EU average?
So it's wealthy, it's beautiful.
And it's feeling the friction, that immense friction that comes from trying to fit modern life, modern pressures into these often historic structures.
Okay, so if we want to understand that friction, we probably need to start with how the city was actually laid out,
Uh-huh.
long before tourism was the main game.
Exactly. We have to go back. The roots are Roman, Barcino. But the city we really recognize today, that started taking shape in the mid-19th century.
This was the industrial boom time.
Yes, explosive growth, but also terrible overcrowding, disease.
Yeah.
The old medieval city couldn't cope.
So the solution was pretty drastic.
Tear down the walls, literally. Demolish the medieval walls to make way for expansion.
And that's when Ildefons Cerdà steps in, the engineer behind the example.
An extension, yeah. And this wasn't just drawing lines on a map, it was a deeply philosophical project for him.
He designed that iconic grid, those octagonal blocks. Why specifically that shape?
It was ingenious, really. Designed to counter the problems of the old city. The octagonal shape, cutting the corners, was meant to maximize sunlight, airflow, ease traffic flow, make intersections safer.
Smart.
And his plan also mandated wide avenues, green spaces inside every block, interior gardens, and crucially, he had this incredibly ambitious social goal to mix social classes, to have the bourgeoisie and the working class living side by side across this new grid, equality by design.
But that's kind of where the first crack appears, isn't it? Especially thinking about today's housing issues. That social mixing goal, it didn't really happen.
It started to fail almost immediately, sadly. Cerdà's egalitarian vision, well, it ran headfirst into real estate speculation and class divisions.
So the wealthy snapped up the best spots.
Pretty much the prime blocks near the center, along the main avenues, and they started building deeper, denser buildings, often ignoring the rules about interior courtyards, filling them in.
And the less desirable blocks.
They attracted less investment, became more working class. So the grid looked uniform on the map, but the socioeconomic reality fractured right from the start. It laid the groundwork for the kind of inequality and displacement pressures we see today.
That makes the architectural explosion that followed even more interesting, because it was fueled by this new, wealthy class commissioning these incredible buildings.
Absolutely. That sets the stage for modernism. The late 19th, early 20th century, you get giants like Gaudi, Dominic Montaigne,
The Sagrada Familia, Casa Batlló, Park Güell.
Hospital de Sant Pau. These aren't just buildings, they're globally recognized works of art. The city now has 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites just from that period.
I see the connection now. That architectural fame, it wasn't just about aesthetics. It became part of the city's brand, its soft power.
Precisely. And that soft power, that cultural capital, was absolutely key in helping Barcelona secure and then pull off the 1992 Olympic Games.
The Olympics. Everyone points to that as the big moment.
It was the critical turning point. The games were the catalyst, maybe the excuse, for massive public investment. Huge infrastructure upgrades, ports, roads, reclaiming the entire waterfront, creating beaches.
It basically remade the city's image.
Fundamentally, it shifted Barcelona from being seen as maybe a slightly faded industrial port to the vibrant global metropolis we know now. And it directly kicked off the modern tourism boom.
Which brings us to its identity today as this cultural engine. UNESCO calls it a creative city.
And the culture is so varied. You've got the Gothic quarter, this dense historic maze.
Then you jump to somewhere like Poblano, and it's all repurposed warehouses, street art, a totally different vibe.
Plus flamenco, avant-garde galleries. It's layered.
So how is the city managing this incredible cultural legacy alongside all the pressures of a modern city?
Well, it's interesting. This new title they've got, UNESCO UIA World Capital of Architecture for 2026, it's actually forcing a big citywide conversation.
Debate about what specifically?
It's not just about celebrating Gaudi anymore. It's about how architecture can or should mediate these really tough conflicting pressures, the extreme density, questions of identity, and crucially, climate change.
So preservation versus what? Living fabric?
Kind of. Should the focus be solely on preserving the iconic masterpieces, or should resources go towards nurturing the everyday working-class urban fabric, the vernacular architecture, the neighborhoods where most people actually live?
I noticed that shift in some of the city's policies, like the Barcelona Heritage City Strategy.
Yes, that's key. They're actively trying to broaden the definition of heritage, move beyond just the famous monuments.
To include things like neighborhood memory, popular heritage, they call it.
It sounds like an attempt to say the real life of the city, the residents' experience, that's heritage too.
It feels like valuing the local over the global gaze, in a way.
It is. It's acknowledging that the city's soul, its authenticity, lies in the day-to-day life of its people. But, and this is the huge but,
it crashes right into the tourism economy.
Exactly. This push for local preservation collides head-on with Barcelona's immense global magnetism, which fuels its main economic engine.
Tourism. And that's the core contradiction we see playing out, right?
Yeah.
The sheer scale of tourism versus local livability.
The numbers are staggering. Pre-pandemic 2019, it was 14.6 million visitors. It bounced back fast, 12.4 million in 2023.
That's just official overnight stays, presumably.
Mostly, yes. And the spending is huge, over 10.3 billion in 2023. It supports, they estimate, over 155,000 jobs, about 14% of the city's GDP. It's significant.
But there's another side to those numbers.
There is, because grassroots groups, the ones tracking day trippers, cruise passengers, people on unregistered rentals, they estimate the actual number of tourists in 2023 could have been upwards of 31 million.
31 million?
Yes.
Wait, the resident population is 1.6 million.
Roughly, yeah.
So potentially nearly 20 tourists for every resident over the course of a year. That ratio feels completely overwhelming.
It puts the city under immense strain, particularly during peak season. It feels like it's constantly operating in crisis mode sometimes.
You see the stress points.
Oh, absolutely. Overcrowding on public transport is obvious. Noise, traffic congestion, waste management struggles, and water demand. That's becoming a critical issue with the droughts.
And this touristification, it pushes people out.
Studies show that. Back in 2019, research clearly linked it to residents leaving certain areas, huge pressure on housing, and services fluctuating wildly depending on the season, especially in places like Barcelona or the Gothic quarter.
So how does the city try to manage this? They can't just turn off the tap economically.
No, they can't. They're trying to sort of tighten the valves. We saw the ban in 2021 on new short-term private room rentals, trying to limit that kind of accommodation supply.
In the cruise ships.
There's a plan to reduce the number of active terminals from 7 down to 5. The explicit goal is to lower the daily number of cruise visitors flooding in all at once.
But the economic debate around this must be intense.
Highly polarized. Advocates will point to the jobs, the GDP contribution, which is undeniable.
And the critics.
They argue too much of that economic value leaks out. It goes to global booking platforms, to foreign investors buying up apartments to rent out. It doesn't always benefit the long-term residents trying to afford to live in their own city. It's that classic growth versus sustainability tension.
And if you look at what residents themselves are saying, those recent municipal surveys.
Housing, it's crystal clear.
Over 20%, nearly 21% of residents said housing access was their #1 problem. Not crime, not traffic, housing.
And that connects right back to those earlier issues. the failure of Cerdà's social mixing goal, now massively compounded by decades of speculation and the recent tourism boom.
How bad is the inflation?
Estimates put rent inflation at something like 68% over the past decade. 68%.
How can ordinary people cope with that?
It forces people out. Working class families, young people starting out, they get displaced. It fundamentally changes the social fabric of neighborhoods. Imagine trying to keep a family tradition going in your Gothic quarter flat when the rent's nearly doubled.
And it's not just tourism driving the pressure, is it?
No, that's important to remember. There's significant migration, too. People moving from other parts of Spain and internationally, from Latin America, North Africa, Eastern Europe. That also puts pressure on housing, on schools, on infrastructure. The city is trying to manage diversity and resource scarcity at the same time.
And geographically, it's boxed in.
Right. The coastline on one side, the hills like Montjuic on the other, that compact footprint means it can't easily sprawl outwards.
Which just intensifies all these infrastructure problems.
Exactly. The density makes public transport essential. But even with a good network, the metro, buses, trams, they get overwhelmed at peak times, especially when commuter flows mix with huge tourist groups.
And those narrow medieval streets in the Old Town.
Yeah.
You can't exactly widen those easily for more buses or trams.
It makes major transit upgrades incredibly complex and expensive.
We also need to touch on the environmental strain. That feels like the next big defining challenge.
For the next few decades, absolutely. Green space is limited only about 10% of the city area, even counting big parks like Montjuic.
Which means
It acts like a heat island. And that's critical given the climate challenges Barcelona is facing now. More intense heat waves, prolonged droughts leading to water restrictions already.
water scarcity is a current problem, not a future one.
It's already a major concern. Plus, you have issues with storm runoff and heavy rain, coastal pressure from sea level rise. The city's resilience is being tested.
So, faced with all this, the city can't just react anymore. It needs a serious long-term plan.
Which is where initiatives like Barcelona 2050 come in. It's ambitious because it forces the city to confront these difficult trade-offs head-on.
What's it mapping out?
Everything. Future transport needs, how to manage density, shifting to decentralized energy, major ecological resilience programs. The suture block concept is a big part of this.
Ah, yes, turning traffic streets into pedestrian zones.
Essentially reclaiming road space for people, for green space, block by block. It's almost like trying to retrofit Cerdà's original idea of interior green spaces, but doing it out on the street level 150 years later.
Trying to build livability back into this dense environment.
An environment that was never designed for 21st century cars, climate change, or this level of global tourism. Barcelona 2050 really positions the city as a kind of live experiment.
A test case for how a dense, historic Mediterranean city tries to adapt.
Adapt to climate change and demographic pressure simultaneously.
And this complexity, this struggle, it feeds back into Barcelona's global influence, doesn't it? In design, urban planning circle.
Absolutely. Its problems and its potential solutions, they aren't just local news, they influence thinking worldwide.
So connecting it all back, Barcelona becomes this crucial case study for any city dealing with or maybe benefiting from mass tourism.
It poses the sharpest questions. How do you genuinely manage visitor flows without killing the golden goose economically?
And how do you make sure the benefits, the livability, spread out across all the neighborhoods, not just the tourist hotspots in the center? Decentralization.
It forces you, the visitor, the observer, to really question what urban success means. Who is this incredibly attractive, globalized city ultimately for?
It's exhilarating to visit, no doubt.
All right. But potentially unequal, burdened, fragile for those who call it home year-round. It pulses with life, but it feels vulnerable too.
It's the perfect storm, maybe, of global magnetism crashing into the reality of everyday life on a very local scale. Every step you take on its beautiful streets has this unseen weight, this consequence.
Which leaves us with something for you, the listener, to think about.
A final provocative thought. If a city is only exotic to strangers, does it owe more of its space, its resources, its very identity to its locals? When you walk down La Rambla, whose voice echoes louder under your feet, the fleeting excitement of the visitor or the enduring claim of the resident?